What's going on, guys? I am very excited to announce that Philly Sports Trips is now the official travel partner of the You Know Ball podcast. The biggest reason why I've partnered with Philly Sports Trips is really simple. I give them my money. I have a mini vacation that involves the Sixers, Eagles, and Phillies, and I don't have to lift a finger to plan anything. I can party as light as I want or as hard as I want, and Philly Sports Trips takes care of everything that I hate. The planning, the organizing, researching where to go, and I get a 5-star hotel, non-crazy flight schedules, and tailgates that have unbelievable food and booze, and most importantly, it's a douchebag-free zone. These are just some of the many reasons that I am excited to partner with Philly Sports Trips. I can't wait to go on a Sixers trip next season, and Uniball is absolutely going on the road to at least one Eagles game. So let me know which Eagles game you would want to go to, and I would love to do a huge Uniball road trip. Out of all the cities, I'm thinking New York or Chicago, but I want to know what you guys think as well. So tweet at me at TrillBroDude, DM me, comment on the YouTube, and let me know which Eagles game you guys think we should go as a group this season. Phillies and Eagles trips are booking right now. So head over to phillysportstrips.com and let them know that You Know Ball sent you for two very important reasons. Not only does it help fund the podcast, but we'll have VIP events and goodies specifically just for You Know Ball listeners. phillysportstrips.com, premium travel for every Philly sports fan, and a proud sponsor of the You Know Ball podcast. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, TrillBroDude, and today I am excited to have onto the podcast for the first time my buddy from Twitter, Josh Reynolds, the host of the new podcast, That's Ball Folks. What's going on, Josh?
What up, Trill? How are you, man? Honored to be here.
I'm doing well. We got some slop. So, anytime that the slop drops, my brain chemicals are popping off. So
the Slop King.
Yeah, I got a tip a little bit before that the slop was about to drop, and I was like, let's go. So we get this new article that comes out today from Jake Fischer, which kind of confirms some thoughts that we've had, which is basically confirming that James Harden is going to opt into his deal. It didn't say flat out, this is definitely going to happen. He's going to opt in and extend for 2 years, but it did say that is what's most likely to happen, which means that $47 million cap hit, which is kind of brutal, is going to happen this year, but it is not the 5-year max. Ownership did not want to give the 5-year max, and it's not just an opt-in and that's it, and this is his last year potentially as a Sixer. So how did you feel about the deal, and how do you think this affects the offseason?
Yeah, so I'm happy about this. I think that this is literally the perfect scenario for us as Sixers fans, having Harden not just, we were kind of talking earlier, not just opt in for 1 year where we have to worry about the future, but have a nice little window where this is our championship run. Like these next 3 years, this is our window to actually make a run at it. If you sign him to a max deal, a 5-year deal, whatever, like he's old. At that point, he's really old. So I'm really glad that we don't have to worry about paying him that much money that late into his career. But also, I think that this is the perfect scenario for us. The money up front this year is going to be brutal, like absolutely brutal. I'm very curious what the 2-year extension, the 2-year contract is going to look like number-wise.
Right. Is it going up? Is it going down?
Exactly. Does it give us a little wiggle room? Personally, I would like to think that it does. It's just I'm throwing just darts here at the dartboard, but I think that Harden is smart enough to realize like this is it. This is my best scenario. This is my best setup. I'm playing with the best player who I've played with that complements his game. Obviously, Kevin Durant is, I think, the best player on the planet.
I think that's fair.
yeah. But it's like, okay, I think that he hopefully, fingers crossed, and this is just optimistic me, maybe take less money, give us more wiggle room, kind of the whole Tom Brady approach, right? Where I'm going to take less money. Let's bring in dudes who complement us and let's make a road run at this. So it'll be interesting to see what those numbers look like, but just initial thoughts, like I'm actually happy about it.
Yeah. Honestly, at first I was a little bit bummed because I'm a sicko and my thought was like, no, the MLE and the BAE and the things that I've been talking about for weeks that I've been thinking about, they're probably not going to happen now, or at least a smaller version of them will have to happen now. So, for example, instead of getting the full $10 million for the MLE, they'll have like $5 or $6 million to work with for the taxpayer MLE, because they will definitely be in the tax unless they can figure out some other moves, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, personally, I would have preferred to see him maybe opt out, and then we could have worked out like a smaller extension that moved up the cap hits next year and the following year when we're not going to have cap space anyway. Although Derek Bodner has floated out that 2 years, the last year of that Harden deal, there could potentially be, Tobias Harris's deal's definitely off the books. Tyrese Maxey is going to get an extension, but his cap hit's going to be very, very low. If you bring it up to free agency, he was a late first round pick, so he's going to have a lower cap hit, and you could potentially in 2 years from now, if things don't work out in the next 2 years, maybe one last all-in year where you go for a 4-star. At that point, you're hoping that Maxey will be the 3rd star, or you can try to get more role players that fit around them. But for now, I do think it's a little bit of a bummer, and it makes everything else pressurized. So, like, they have to hit on the 23rd pick, or they have to move Danny with the 23rd pick and get back a starting level player. They have to figure out what they're going to do with Thybulle and Tobias, whether they're going to keep them, move them. They have to figure out what they're going to do with Korkmaz. Like, the moves that they could have made in free agency with those other things kind of relieve some of the pressure from these, like, more marginal moves that like wouldn't necessarily matter as much. But because they won't have access to more money in free agency and they'll basically just be operating on veterans minimums and the taxpayer MLE, then I think that it's like we got to get those other moves right, or else this could be not great.
Yep, I completely agree. Like I said, this is the window. Like, we have to hit on everything else. And I agree, to your point, ideally it would have been nice for him to opt out and kind of restructure something, because from a team standpoint, that would have been ideal. That would have been perfect for us. Realistic standpoint, it's like, okay, of course he opted in. Like, I get it. I think all of us were like,
$47 million. Yeah,
it's tough to turn down at any point in your career. But yeah, it just kind of, I mean, the optimistic side of me was like, great, maybe he's just going to take less money right out of the gate. But it's like, okay, deep down, I knew this was probably going to happen. But like you said, this really, really puts us in the pressure cooker and handcuffs us big time, to the point where every single one of these deals we have to hit on. And I am fascinated, again, listening to you talk about it for so long. I'm very curious, if we do move the pick, if we do move Danny, do we take our guy if he lands there at 23? Like, these next week is going to be kind of do or die time. And I am fascinated and very nervous.
One of the things that I do like about Morey is the fact that he will take it up to the last fucking second, because most GMs would be like, we got to move the pick now. We got to get what we can get, blah, blah, blah. Morey will wait to see how the board shakes out. He might have intel from other front offices that a team really likes Tari Eason or Jaden Hardy, or one of those guys that could be there at 23, one of the more high upside guys, even Nikola Jovic, the foreign prospect. Like, there are a lot of guys that he could know. And then if he gets them before they pick at 25 or 26, maybe he could get more assets out of that. Maybe he could get that later first round pick, and then also like a second round pick in this draft, or maybe a heavily protected future first if someone wants to move up from the early second or whatever it is. Like, there are ways to like kind of maneuver your way into getting more stuff to help you now and flip that stuff. But like, I would lean towards them finding a trade for the Danny thing with the first round pick. It's going to be tough just because a lot of teams aren't itching to pay a guy $10 million to not play, basically.
Yeah,
like,
he
says he's going to be back next year, but like, the thing about Danny is that like, if there is a rebuilding team, Danny is an awesome locker room guy. Everyone loves him. He's been on championship teams. Like, I don't think that people would like not want Danny Green around. Like, I think like if he were able to play, like, we could easily move him and get back someone else that made a little bit more sense for us, maybe, or we could just keep him. But the one thing I will say is the Christian Wood thing made me. So the Christian Wood thing is like its own circumstance, because I think a lot of people saw that deal and they were like, oh, the Mavs got, like a steal, and like the Rockets got fleeced and all of that. But at the same time, like, Christian Wood's going into the last year of his deal.
You're right.
He's been a locker room problem.
Yep.
He has not necessarily ever been on a winning team, so we don't know how that's going to look. And they got, like, theoretically, I mean, on a talent basis, it's a great trade for the Mavs.
Yes.
And like, if the Sixers could take Danny Green, because basically what they did is they just moved a bunch of salary that's going to do nothing for the Rockets next year. If they could move Danny Green plus maybe Korkmaz and that first round pick and get back someone useful and is like a legit starting level player, then I'll feel a lot better about Harden opting in.
Yep, I'm right. I'm in the same exact shoes as you. The Christian Wood thing was, I'm right there with you. He has not been a part of any type of winning basketball or winning organization in his whole career. So,
He's
I mean, you can,
Sixer.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can look back at Summer League Sixer and be like, oh yeah, he was. But yeah, it just, that whole deal, I mean, on paper, it makes perfect sense for Dallas, and I agree. But that also kind of, I don't know if that sets the precedent for this week, and to see if, okay, that's the bar. Like, it's always interesting to see the first kind of domino fall, right? Because it's like, okay, great. On paper, it looks like this is a home run for Dallas. It looks like it kind of was a steal because they just, like you said, unloaded all these contracts for players who never got minutes for them, for a guy who potentially could be awesome. But who knows? Time will tell for that. But on the Sixers side of things, I'm right there with you. Like, I know you're a huge draft guy, and I like the draft. I like the guys in it, especially where our pick falls. But again, where we talked about it, where this is our championship window, and knowing Doc Rivers and knowing how much he doesn't play our young guys. I talked about this on a podcast with my guy, Sean Bernard, just recently. It's like, you got to hope that Doc learned from his mistakes maybe a little bit and does give these young guys some run in the regular season so they don't make these rookie mistakes in the postseason. But it's like, okay, if this next 3 years is our actual window, then maybe you look at it from that standpoint of like, okay, we have these young guys who, if we know they're going to be a part of our rotation already, then let's go get a veteran. Let's go get somebody who can actually produce and actually contribute to this team, rather than take a flyer on a guy at 23 who could be great, could be a bust. Like, I would hardly call a guy at 23 a bust, but like, does he impact winning right now?
50% of the time, the 23rd pick is not.
Yeah, like, it doesn't do anything.
If this were the Sacramento Kings, if this were whatever team, if this was a team that I didn't trust the scouting department, I would be like, move the pick, not even a question in my mind. Like, get rid of that pick. But because of the fact that I think that the Sixers are really good at scouting in the first and second round, they've been able to get at least rotation players that maybe if they didn't have Doc as coach, then they would be able to contribute a little bit more. But they've shown contributions at the very least with Maxey and Shake. And even going back to Shamit and all of that, like, you had Paul Reed in the playoffs this year. Like, the one thing that I will say, though, is I don't know if the trade market at the end of the first is going to be great, because, like you said, the Christian Wood thing might have set the bar high enough that teams are like, why am I moving the 23rd pick when they just got like a legitimately really talented offensive player in Christian Wood who can shoot, catch lobs, like set screens. Like, he can do everything that you want with a guy with Luka, and he's kind of a perfect fit offensively there. Why am I settling for someone who might just be like okay for me? And also, our OKC already moved the 30th pick in the draft. The Mavs just moved the 20th. I think they had the 26th pick, maybe 27th pick.
I think
the Warriors want to move their first round pick. I would imagine that there are other teams that would be interested in moving. Like Denver already has 2 late firsts. So like, it's possible that it gets to the point where this market isn't great because the bar was set high by that, but also everyone wants to trade out of the end of the first.
Yeah, you're right. It's saturated.
Right. Why am I overpaying for a guy, as we've said, we don't even know is going to be on my team? Like, unless it's a situation where, like, my perfect example of like a brilliant trade at the end of the first round, one of my favorite draft night trades ever was when the Celtics were picking at 30 in the 2020 draft, and the Memphis Grizzlies sent 2 future second round picks. And now the Memphis Grizzlies are really good, by the way, because they make moves like this, where they trade 2 second round picks for Desmond Bane. And now it's like Desmond Bane could make an all-star team at some point in his career.
100%.
So like, unless there's a scenario like that, like I mentioned earlier, where it's Eason, Jovic, Hardy, the upside swing guys, I am a little bit worried about, like, what if we get to draft night and we just kind of have to draft whoever falls to us, because the market's just absolutely terrible.
You're right. It gets a little scary. I want to know too, are you a guy who takes fit or best available when it comes to our pick?
Best available player every single time. I don't ever, I go like, I think about it like this. The Sixers definitely need contributors, and they definitely need guys who, and I remember getting into arguments about the Jaden Springer pick last year when people wanted other guys there at the end of the first. And my whole thing was, look, this guy was in the lottery. If he ever flashes in his first 2 years, immediately has trade value. He's on a rookie contract. There are rebuilding teams that would give up legit stuff for him. And you also have the fact that like you can figure out how to use these guys later in trades, or you can try to develop them in-house. And like, dude, how many playable players do the Sixers have in the playoffs? 5?
Yeah,
like,
maybe
4.5. Like, let's be
yep.
honest. It's Embiid, it's Harden, it's Maxey, it's Tobias, and then like maybe Paul Reed. And like, other than that, we don't have enough rotation players to be like, hey, we can definitely just like take for fit here. Like, draft the best player available. If another team's interested in them, flip them and maybe get some more. And if not, then try to keep them, maybe show them off a little bit. And who knows, maybe someone can come in right away, come off your bench and be a rotation player, if not this year, next year. And then you're like, we have a guy on a late first round contract like Tyrese Maxey, and that changes the trajectory of your franchise.
Yep, changes everything. I'm right there with you. I have always been the guy who takes you have to take just the best available. It drafting for fit always gets scary, but I'm right there with you. The upside will always outweigh everything else. Like you said, I mean, Springer, Maxey's the prime example. I sure as hell didn't think that Maxey was going to turn into what he is. And hindsight, thank goodness the whole Simmons thing happened the way he did, because Maxey wouldn't have got the minutes that he did last year. So if you can you take a risk on a guy like that, again, you're at 23. I'm right there with you. I think that if the best available falls to us and it's somebody who our team has proven, like you said, our scouts have proven to, especially in this area, it's almost like our wheelhouse. It's like, great. Yeah, we're out of the lottery. So now we're golden.
Give me another lottery talent. It's like, if there is a guy that they think is a lottery talent, whether it's all those guys that I mentioned, if they think they're a lottery talent, Daryl Morey will draft them and figure out the rest later. And I like that approach, mainly because every draft, there's about 20 to 25 players who actually have NBA careers out of 60 picks. And most of those guys are like out of the league in 5 or 6 years, but they played minutes at least. And like, they were in rotations and stuff. The large majority of drafts, there's only like 5 to 10 guys who have meaningful NBA careers, whether that's all-stars, high-level rotation players, whatever it is. So when you're drafting for fit, like you just have to look at it like, look, there's a 50-50 shot this guy's even an NBA player. Might as well get a guy I know is going to be an NBA player, and I at least think that I can project that in a few years he will be a legit player, and figure out the rest later. Because like, I personally, like, I talked about my 4 guys that I have on the list, and we'll just get into some of a little bit of the draft stuff right now, because I have this on my list. But Jaden Hardy was mocked to the Sixers twice in two Intel-based mock drafts. So Bleacher Report and ESPN. So Jonathan Givony and Jonathan Wasserman both projected him to go at 23. And Keith Pompey, who bless his heart, posted and had a list of guys. Does Keith listen to the podcast?
He might, dude. He might listen to you. We got to get him to do like voice over some ad for you or something on here. 100%.
I hope that he didn't see my last episode when I was destroying the stash idea, because someone was like, dude, that was pretty brutal. And I was like, I didn't mean it. I just hated the idea. I just don't like the idea at all. But he posted a list of the guys that the Sixers could potentially target at the end of the first round. And to sum it up, it's basically all of the guys that I mentioned on the last episode: Tari Eason, Jalen Williams, EJ Liddell, Blake Wesley, Marjon Beauchamp, Jaden Hardy, who are like, literally, if I were to rank my guys in order, that would be my top 6, except for like maybe Dalen Terry, who I would have somewhere in that second tier. And I think that the Hardy stuff, like those Intel mock drafts matter. Well, whether that matters from the perspective of the Sixers are definitely interested in this guy, or is it so that like an agent wants to get the thought out there that they're interested, or maybe Morey knows that there's a team once again that is interested, and he's like, put him to us, so that if a team wants to target him, they either have to trade ahead of us or they have to trade with us in order to get him. So I personally, like I've been saying throughout this whole draft process, give me Eason, give me Terry, give me dogs. Like, give me someone who's going to go out there, play defense, rebound, like do the hustle things, whatever. But then Jaden Hardy fell to us, and I was like, it's time to go back to the old me and get on my ball, don't stop shit and get a real hooper because
this dude's a hooper.
He is and he's got a little bit of dog in him after he gets like the and ones, like he's he's getting into it. But like, I don't know about you, but like I've said this before. I have a type, certainly guys who pop on film, and of course, a guy who gets buckets at a high level is going to pop on film. All the things about him that are negative are everything you've heard about every hooper throughout the process. He's horrible shot selection. He doesn't pass the ball. You know, like he's a good shooter, but like he's just like all over the place, whatever. Like he can get his own buckets, but that's kind of it. And my whole thought process on this is that if you hit on that archetype, and even if they're just a 6-man, even if they're a Jordan Clarkson type, then that's a valuable player. And
huge,
And if they're not, then who knows what his upside can be if he's even higher. If he's a starter level player, a guy who can get buckets, like I don't know. I might just be falling in love with the dude because he literally reminds me of all of my favorite hooper prospects.
I love him too, man. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but seeing him fall to us on those mock drafts like that, if that happens, you've got to believe a guy like that. I'm with you on the dog thing, by the way. Let me just get that out of the way. Our team needs a dog so damn bad, so badly. Like that's what's missing. Our dog is Niang. I love Niang, but like, come on, man. he's like your little. No, he's your like fluffy little poodle. Like we need like our dog, and I love Niang. He's my guy, but
he's like a Great Dane. We're like really big and like, but like at the same time, you're like really tough. Are you? Like,
yes, exactly. No, and this team needs that so bad. Philly needs that. You think just Philadelphia basketball, you'd think a dog, and we don't have that. So I'm right there with you. Any of those guys on your list, like I think would be great. But Hardy, man, that I love what you said about him last episode. Like I think that everything about him could be perfect. Like you said, if it's a Jordan Clarkson type role, shit, we need that. We need something like that. I would take that in a heartbeat. So I'm right there with you. If he's there, I've got to believe that we actually make the selection. But who knows, man? I don't know. It like you said with Moria, it's always interesting because he literally waits until the last possible second, which I appreciate. But as a fan like us, where we jump on and talk about it all the time, we jump on podcasts and stuff like this. It's like, okay, like I just want to know what direction we're heading. And if Hardy lands on our team, I'll be thrilled. If we can land any one of these dudes, I'll be absolutely thrilled. And also, if we can flip it for a dude who can actually contribute, I'll be thrilled. So I don't know. I sound like just the biggest idiot in the world who's like, no, dude, I'll be so happy no matter what. But
you're being optimistic about the Sixers, dude. You're not allowed on my podcast anymore.
I know, dude. It's hard.
No, I love this time of year because we can trick ourselves. Where I'm like, oh my God, everything. And look, everything's been fine except for the whole Ben Simmons thing since Morey got here. In terms of like, I don't hate the moves that he made.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like you just like there's nothing like the 2020 draft. Like when he's dealing, and you're like, and then you get Maxey, and then you get Isaiah Joe in the second round, who we thought we were gonna get in the first round, and then like we get Seth Curry, and it's like all of these
best
things
night
happen.
ever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's one of my favorite nights as a Sixers fan, and they didn't even play a game. That tells you a lot about our experience as fans of the team.
I was legit going to say the same thing. Like looking back and just through the process years, it's like, it's hilarious how far we've come because the lottery night was one of my favorite nights of the whole season.
Oh yeah.
And draft night and draft week was like, oh my gosh, this is better than them actually playing. Because it's just that little hope.
I've been listening to my buddies who do an OKC podcast because I just missed the process, like leading up to like all of that shit. Like I just like I want to get that feeling back, and like hearing them talk about like we have the second pick and the 12th pick, like it's fun to like project forward like that.
It is. It's the hope. It's just that like little hope of like, oh man, like we're gonna get our guy. And for us now, it's so unique going through that experience because it's like, okay, great, we've got our guy. Now we have one of the best 75 basketball players in history of the game on our team. So now it's just so funny being on this side of it, but I'm right there with you. It's like, it's all about that hope, man. It's just that little bit of hope that's like, okay, there is something to be optimistic about. We can wish, we can hope.
Yes, we have hopium. No more copium, just hopium over here.
Hopium.
Until they have to play another basketball game. Then immediately that will go out the window for me. Okay, so just to sum up here, we know that we'll talk a little bit more about trades. I have some listener submitted questions and trades that we'll bring up later. And right now we have a report from Keith, once again, our boy Keith Pompey,
our guy,
who seemingly used to be like really plugged into the Sixers and now just kind of like says things and like, I guess he just like kind of hopes they come true, because yesterday he reports that Shake Milton is part of this larger report, which, by the way, Jake Fischer also reported today some of the things he said in there. They're going to look to move Thybulle and Tobias, the 23rd pick, all that stuff. So Keith, I mean, I think that we think that Jake's pretty accurate, and
yes, Jake's always spot on.
Yeah, and Keith, well, except for the Harden stuff, but we'll give him a
minus that.
We'll give him a pass. No, even Woj was like off on that.
Nobody knew.
Yeah. But so going back to kind of what Keith had reported was that he basically said, I honestly think it was a misprint. Like, I think what he meant to say was teams around the league are expecting, because he said earlier in the article they're going to trade Shake Milton. They're going to try to trade Shake Milton. And then 2 paragraphs later, he completely contradicted himself by saying teams around the league expect Shake Milton to not get his option picked up, which you can't trade a guy if you don't pick up his option.
No, I'm right there with you. It had to be a misprint. And when I saw that report, I saw you tweet about it. I'm like, why on earth would we not pick up Shake's option? It's what, $1.9 million for a guy who can.
The least amount of money that someone can make as a veteran.
Yes. What on earth for a dude who we've actually seen can play and hoop and handle the ball? It's like, when I saw that, I was absolutely blown away. And then sure enough, reports started coming out right after that contradicted the Shake news. I mean, there's, again, we talk about it all the time. What downside is there of picking up a $1.9 million option for Shake? None.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I mean, maybe I've just like once again poisoned my own brain to the point where like I see hoopers and I'm like, okay, like Shake's kind of a hooper, and like all I'll say is Shake Milton has had more playoff moments for a guy that's like a 10th man than the large majority of 10. Like in the last game of the series, he was one of the only guys that was actually fucking trying. I think he scored 18 points on 6 of 8 from the field. He was hustling. He's
the only dude hustling on the court.
Yeah. And I'm like, you need that energy, even if it's like a guy that's a little bit further down your bench that will just push the guys that are ahead of him to like play better, basically, and just like actually give a shit. But, the thing about Shake is like, I wouldn't be like, if they could find a trade for him this offseason and a team believes in Shake maybe more than the Sixers do, and he's going into the last year of that deal where you're going to have him for this minimum deal and he might get like a $5 million, $8 million contract next year, then you could say, okay, in this situation, maybe it's time to move on, whatever. But like for now, he seems to get along with everyone. Like it just makes sense to keep him. He's still like 25. Like, I know I'm contradicting myself because whenever I talk about Thybulle, I'm like, he sucks. He's 25. He's basically 50 years old in my mind. He's going to die soon from old age. So he can't get any better possibly. But Shake Milton, on the other hand, but I will say, I don't think that Shake's going to make any sort of leap. But like, if he's our 9th man next year, we can't find another guard in the draft or in free agency, and he's your 4th guard, like, you get it like someone that's like a 3rd guard that can like capably come in off the bench. And then when Harden needs the rest, he can come in. Like, I'm fine with keeping Shake Milton. I'm not like, if he can ever get the shot back, I think that he could be a useful player. But how many Sixers have we said that about?
Yeah, sad. We sound like broken records, man. But you're 100% right. Like, I don't see him being a dude who's first off the bench and giving us like actual meaningful production. But exactly like you said, especially for that option in his contract, he's absolutely worth having on the bench to push those guys who we think will. And I mean, it's a long season. We know our team. We know there's going to be injuries. We know there's going to be games where they rest. And to have a dude like Shake where it's like, great, guess what, Shake, you're getting a lot of minutes tonight. Like, we know what he can do.
Any given night, he's just like, sometimes he'll just come out and drop 25, and you're like,
he's a hooper.
Fuck?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yep, and I'll never ever forget that game against the Clippers, man, where Paul George is screaming for help. Like,
you and Doc Rivers both.
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot Doc was on that squad. Yes, 100%. Like, we know that he's got that in his bag, and like you said, if he can capture and bring back that shot of his a little bit, then great. Like, I'm right there with you. That report was kind of hilarious. I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that it was a misprint because it made no sense. Yeah,
it made no sense because I think even Keith knows that, like, if you decline someone's option, you can't trade them unless it's a sign and trade, and no one's going to sign and trade for Jake Milton. Like, that's just not really how it works. No. But okay, so in that report as well, there was a weird thing that I picked up on that I didn't see many people talking about it, but the Pacers were interested in Furkan Korkmaz at the deadline. So it does seem like the Pacers are kind of doing their own version of a process where, like, they're just trying to get young guys. They're just trying to get picks. They're just trying to move on from most of their veterans and kind of, you know, they're doing the Midwest version of the process because they're a small market and they can't just, like, tank, like, full out. Like, OKC is different because OKC has Sam Presti, who everyone knows and trusts and whatever. Like, the Pacers are trying to, you know, kind of do this rebuild on the fly where they stay somewhat competitive, but they're kind of tanking. So it does seem like Korkmaz might have some interest out there. I will say, before this podcast, I tried to make some trades work with the Pacers, including Furkan Korkmaz. Other than the Malcolm Brogdon one I came up with last week, which I don't think is realistic, there's no one on that team that, like, they're not trading Halliburton. We've talked about the Buddy Hield thing 100 times. If we get him for free, it's going to be hard to even get up to his cap number. Like, I don't even think we can. But if we get Buddy Hield for free, great. I'm not giving up a lot of stuff for Buddy Hield. And then the other best player on their roster is, like, Miles Turner. Like, can we get Chris Duarte, the rookie from last year, who's already, like, in his prime at 32 years old? Like, I just don't see anyone on the Pacers that would, like, move me, I guess.
Nope, I'm right there with you. And it's unfortunate because Furkan's yellow shoes would look really nice with those Pacers unis. So that sucks. But I'm right there with you. There's not a realistic path for that to happen. And it is funny that Buddy Hield's name will forever be linked with Philadelphia, whether he's liking tweets about wanting to be traded there, whatever. I mean, the poor dude, anybody spends that much time in Sacramento, I would be doing anything I could possibly to show any bit of interest to get out of there as well. But yeah, there's nobody on that squad. Like, even Duarte, when he was healthy, was like an actual stud, like sharpshooter. I don't think they're going to trade him. Like, there's no realistic path besides Brogdon. But again, we talked about that. I don't think that's realistic. And if it is realistic, it's like a huge risk. And we move our really only pieces this offseason for a guy who we just don't think can. I mean, we know he can't stay healthy. Yeah, which is unfortunate. And honestly, I'll never forgive that dude anyway for winning Rookie of the Year over Dario. Should have been Dario. So yeah, anytime I hear Brogdon's name, I'm like, that son of a bitch.
Well, they're both, and also the thing about Brogdon and Hield is that I feel like they've been theoretical Sixers for like 4 years.
Yes.
Like, it just feels like for the rest of their career, we'll talk about those guys. Like, oh, could we maybe get, it's like, no, it's never going to happen. Just we have James Harden. We have James Harden and Tyrese Maxey now. Move on with your life. The only thing that I'm pissed about when it comes to that trade not happening is that I and maybe it was a part of the Sabonis Halliburton deal and it had to happen, and we were just so focused on the Harden stuff that, like, we couldn't. But, like, I was banging the drum so hard for Justin Holiday, who I thought would have been like a nice awesome 2-3 for us that could have come off the bench and been a movement shooter and played decent defense. Basically, he's exactly what we want from Isaiah Joe, which is like a movement shooter who can play help defense and and run around screens and do all the stuff that you want that guy to do. But, like, you know, he gets traded to Sacramento. Also, he wouldn't have been able to play in the Toronto series in Toronto anyway, because he also was not vaccinated. So
I didn't know that. So there you go.
I mean, that could have been a factor in it. Like, they knew Matisse wasn't vaccinated. They're like, can we get another guy who's publicly said he's not vaccinated? Like,
yeah,
then
you're
all
100%
of your
right.
wings are unvaccinated.
Yeah. I didn't know that, but you're 100% right. That easily could have been a part of it. But I agree. A dude just like Holiday is exactly who we need. A guy just like that. And if Isaiah Joe can, I mean, I still think it's early, and quite frankly, I don't think he's been given enough minutes. It's always nice to see him get in here and there, but like, maybe he is that guy, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, well, Doc is throwing up in his mouth as we're saying this right now. He doesn't know why. He's just on like a golf course somewhere, and he's like, he instantly got sick out of nowhere. He's like, what was that?
Like when your nose itches, someone's thinking about you. That's exactly what's happening.
Someone on a podcast said we could maybe play Isaiah Joe real minutes next year. I actually, earlier today, I was looking at the win share. So like sometimes I'm like, I love during the draft going back and looking at older drafts and being like, okay, who from this draft was like the best in terms of like BPM and points per game and win shares and all that stuff. So I went back and I looked on Basketball Reference, and if you sort by win shares per 48 minutes, so basically guys who have had impact. I mean, win shares is kind of a weird statistic. It's not like the perfect advanced stat, but like there's something there. Like if you look at the greatest players of all time, it's like Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, like the guys that you would say are in that category for win shares. And if you sort by win shares per 48 minutes, do you know who the number one player is from the 2020 draft?
Oh,
it's not Tyrese Maxey.
Who is
Paul
it?
Reed.
Really?
Paul Reed. Yes.
Wow.
He is literally the number one performer. He's only played like 475 regular season minutes in his career. Isaiah Joe actually had double the amount of minutes of Paul Reed, which was surprising to me. I didn't realize that. He had almost 1,000. But of the guys in the top 30 from that draft, now it's only been like 2 years. This will change. But of the guys in the top 30 from that draft class, there were 3 that had below 1,000 career minutes in the top 30. One was Paul Reed, one was Skylar Mays from the Atlanta Hawks, and 3 was Isaiah Joe. So we have 3 of the top 30 guys in win shares per 48, and they have got less than 1,000 minutes in their career in 2 years. So it's just so frustrating.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. The Isaiah Joe minutes thing, that really surprises me. I would have never guessed that ever.
There must have been the COVID games.
Oh, yeah, that's 100% why.
Rookie year COVID games. He had like 3 or 4 games where he had to like play big minutes. So that was probably the large majority of his minutes.
That makes sense.
Why would he have all these minutes? And now I'm thinking about it. And if you took the playoffs, which is funny, Paul Reed probably played just as many minutes in the playoffs as he did in his like entire career leading up to the playoffs.
What do you think realistically? And it's a total crapshoot here because it's Doc and we don't know. Do you think that Paul Reed will actually get like meaningful backup minutes this year, or do you think we try to bring in some other big, like heaven forbid that experiment we did last year? Thank goodness that I don't know if it was bullying on Twitter. I don't know if it was the entire fan base just like threatening to turn on him, but like, thank goodness it changed, but it should have changed way earlier in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Dave Early brought this up last week. Jake Fischer did report around I don't know if you remember this, but when we got DeAndre Jordan and he was sucking really bad, and so was Paul Millsap, Jake Fischer came out with a piece that basically said like there was a disconnect between the front office and Doc, and like that, like they wanted to try playing the young guys, and like Doc wasn't willing to, and whatever. Which I'm like, look, I know that he gets say over like apparently he gets say over like 2 or 3 spots on the roster because he's the coach, and like you know, like whatever. But I really, really hope that Morey finally just says like, dude, we have Bassey, we have Reed. Let's see what we have in them, and if they're not good enough, which is totally possible, by the way. We'll
go get you a big.
Yeah, we'll get you a big at the deadline. We can go get any random. We could get JaVale McGee, or we can get someone who actually might play real. Like people were banging the drum for JaMychal Green, and I'm like, you could just get JaMychal Green at the next trade deadline if you could figure out the matching salary. Like like
he's not some untouchable figure.
Exactly.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I do too. I hope that Morey pulls like a money ball straight up where he's like, yeah, tough. This is your roster. You can't play him because he's not on the team anymore. Like, give these young guys a shot.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even like Reed is one thing, because I think Reed and Maxey, obviously, they earn their minutes. Like, they played themselves. Like, the thing about Isaiah Joe that's always frustrated me is like I didn't think Springer was ready at all. Like, I'm not even going to argue that Springer. And I do think that Bassey at least proved that he could be something. And I do think that the thing with Isaiah Joe is like, with shooters, it's all based on their shot going in. And they're going to have games where Klay Thompson goes 0 for 10.
Yeah.
And
doesn't go
Steph
in.
Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, doesn't make a 3 in the last game. And the next game he might shoot 9 for 10. Like, they're gonna be ebbs and flows. And Isaiah Joe, if he could have ever gotten into a groove, might have proven to be one of the better shooters in the NBA. And that's something that every contending team could always use. So my whole thing is I personally think it does sound like, by the way, Kyle Neubeck reported the other day that they're going to give Springer a shot at the rotation next year. They liked that his defense, and they liked how he progressed throughout the year. His whole entire career basically comes down to, can you become a decent shooter? Because if you're not a decent shooter, you're not an NBA player. If you are a decent shooter, could potentially be pretty good NBA. Yeah, right.
Yep.
And Isaiah Joe was the one, he basically ran down the list and said that basically what we're talking about right now, which is they like Reed and Bassey, and they think they're going to stick with that for the backup center situation, not spend anything else on that. And then they obviously know Maxey's good to go. And then the other thing was, they said of all the young guys from the past few drafts, the one that's least likely to return is not even in those terms. Kyle didn't say it exactly like that, but the one that's the hardest to see on the team long-term is Isaiah Joe. So who knows? Maybe they see in practice, they're like, he's just getting bullied on defense, and he's not as good of a shooter as we thought he was going to be. Like, it's possible that Morey and Doc are, in lockstep with Isaiah Joe, and it's possible that he's just not a guy. But once again, I just want equal opportunities for everyone. And I feel like I say this all the fucking time.
Yep, I'm right there with you. It would be nice to just, equal opportunity. I'm right there with you. That's the perfect way to put it. And I am fascinated to see Springer, because I'm right there with you. I think he's shown enough that it's like, okay, but if he can't knock down a shot, I mean, our poor roster, we've already got guys who can't knock down shots. So we need a dude, heaven forbid, who can shoot it.
And I will say, I talked to some draft people on Twitter the other day. Some people are still really high on Springer. They're like, look, man, he was 19. And I went back and I watched some highlights of him, and I was like, the passing's there, the defense is there, the shooting and the ball handling needs to get better. But like, in theory, the one thing that does scare me is like, in theory, he could become a good shooter, because at one point he was a pretty decent shooter. But the one thing that from Nick's Twitter, I can't remember their name. I think it might have been Presidente, who's a draft person, said he still has an issue with his shot. Like, his mechanics are the same. He's just doing it faster. So like, it doesn't look as clunky, but like, he's still like,
it's still
not there. Tough. And like, I'll say this much. I've been a Jaden Springer believer from day one. Even through everything, even through people telling me that I'm an idiot and all that stuff, I will be intensely watching him at Summer League to see if the form is different. Because if the form isn't different, then I might have to sue Keith Williams for once again ruining my life with the Sixers prospect. You know that he's Fultz's guy is Springer's shooting coach.
Dude, why can't we just get rid of? Let's just get away from any type of shooting form issues. Why does that just continue to just follow us?
It's one of those things where I actually said, I was talking about this, about the draft prospects the other day on Twitter. And I was like, look, like, these guys might be good. Like, Kendall Brown could be a good player in a few years. Yeah. I don't want to be the team to find out whether he's ever going to become that good player because the shooting scares the fuck out of me. Because if you can't shoot, you can't play on the Sixers, and unless you're insanely good with the ball, and even then, you still need to be able to have the ability to shoot at least. And like, you're going to be an off-ball player, you got to have a shot. And like, I in the past, my mindset has been shooting is the easiest skill to teach. Like, you can't like, the reason why people are lower on Jabari Smith than they are on Paolo Banchero is because Jabari Smith doesn't have a handle. He has an amazing shot, and he'll be an amazing shooter, but he doesn't have a handle. Paulo the shot isn't there, but he's shown flashes and the handle's
he can put
amazing.
it on the ground.
Right.
Yep.
He's an amazing ball handler. So everyone's like, well, that's already there. If he can ever get the thing that's easily taught, then he'll be great. And the one thing that I've always subscribed to that ideology is like, you can teach a guy, but I need guys that can shoot right now. Like now is our window. We can't be developing guys to become good shooters in 3 years.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Like, I think that's everything that our only focus should be, like we've said 100 times already, is this 3-year window, our championship window. If you can't develop and give us meaningful minutes, heaven forbid, if we need to work on your mechanics and shooting form over the next 2 seasons, like, nope, sorry, tough. Like, that's not going to fly. I'm right there with you, 100% agree. And it's like season after season, man. I don't want to talk about somebody's shooting form again for the rest of my life. And it just seems like here we are, yet another one.
It drives me fucking nuts, dude. All right, hold on 1 second. I'm going to pull up our slides here for the listener requested. There we go. Trades. Okay. So we are going to pop up on the screen some trades that were submitted. I'll read them off. I want to get your opinion on them first.
Great.
So don't let my negative takes about Matisse Thybulle convince you that he has no trade value, because he does. I do genuinely believe. Yeah.
I agree. I won't, because I think we share that sentiment with Matisse. And just like what we were talking about, just to revisit it a little bit about the shooting thing, Embiid is going to continually get double teamed. If we don't, I mean, we've said this now every year of Matisse's career. We gave him a pass his first year because, okay, cool, we don't know what he is. Maybe he'll improve, maybe he won't. If we don't have a big who can shoot and stretch, or I'm sorry, a wing who can actually shoot when Embiid does get double teamed, who, by the way, he's gotten a million times better at passing out of the post, patient. It's night and day different. It's so frustrating to watch him make this unbelievable pass out of a double team to a corner and have him hit the side of the backboard. Or like anyway, I'm right there with you. With the Matisse thing, I'm 100% with you. But I do think that a team will take a flyer on him because
of course
he does have upside.
And the defense is amazing.
Yep.
Like I do think that some of it might be a little bit overblown. I don't know if he's second team all defense good this year, but I do think that he is a very talented defender, and that a team that's willing to invest and work with him that we just don't have the patience for right now. Like, the report said yesterday, Morey's a big fan of his. Like, look, one of the biggest criticism I've had of Morey and his GMing is that I think that he can rely a little bit too much on regular season data, because regular season data will tell you that Matisse Thybulle is one of the best defenders in the NBA. No one disagrees with that, and that he can get by on offense, which is proven to be the case. But as we know, we learned from the Ben Simmons situation, like, you can't be a guy that's afraid to touch the ball in the playoffs. And that's something that I hold. I'm very staunch in my opinion that you have to have a certain mindset to play in the playoffs. Yeah. And you have to have a certain skill set, and he doesn't have that right now. So one of the things that we'll look at in these trades and whatever is like trying to figure out what his trade value is. Because I think it is kind of all over the place, where like I do think that there could be a team that has a good shooting coach, and like, look, they've said, he couldn't get better because he was at the Olympics and he was at COVID the year before, and I'm like, dude, there are plenty of fucking guys that got better in the NBA. Come on, you can still get a shooting coach and shoot in a gym. You think Jason Tatum didn't get any better during the COVID time and because of the Olympics? He's one of the best players on, if not he's the best player on a finals team right now. Like, I don't want to fucking hear it. So, agreed. All right, so let's actually, before we get into this trade right here, I do have a question that was submitted from Damian from Twitter, Damian Bay. He asked me, I meant to say it on the last podcast, so I'll do it on this one. Let's say a lower seed playoff team like the Hornets or the Wizards won a guy who was still on the board at 23. Would you trade it for a top 10 protected pick next year? Ooh, interesting. I haven't looked too much at what the draft is going to look like next year, because again, the way I'm going to approach all these trades is the exact same way. Championship window, 3 years. So I don't know. That's an excellent question. So I think maybe if your guy isn't there at 23 and it comes down to it, then I think you have to. I think you have to do that. That's just a logical, smart thing to do. For sure. But that's a very, very good question. So I would say top 10 protected, yeah, 100%. I'm not even thinking about it, especially if it's a middling team, like the Wizards or whatever. Like,
yes, of course.
Next year's draft, like, okay, so next year's draft is way better than this year's draft. This year's is actually kind of a shitty draft. All like it's not. There's no bad drafts anymore. There's too much talent.
Yeah.
Like these guys will make all-star teams. There will be good role players. That's how it happens. This draft is closer to what 2020 was, where like it's kind of weird and all over the place. The next draft is like last year's draft, 2021, on steroids. Like the top 5 all have like star, if not superstar potential. And then from there, it will make the class deeper, just because that means if the top 5 are all that, then so from there. So if that were the case, absolutely, I would take it, only because like you don't have to keep that pick too. Like,
you're right. You could flip that thing pretty quickly. Yeah, I agree. Exactly. I agree with you.
But I do think if they were to trade, it would be like a top, like if we got this pick and they were like, oh, we'll trade you, it would be top 20 protected. And at that point, like, even though the draft's better next year, I'm probably just taking the guy because you're in the championship window. And if you do have a trade out there and someone's interested in your pick for next year, like for example, the Houston Rockets, who everyone keeps bringing up as a potential trade partner for us, like they're not going to be looking to get more first-round picks in this draft. They have 3 first-round picks in this draft. They had 4 last year, and they couldn't move 2 of them at the end of the first. So, so like it is getting to a situation where like if teams want future picks instead of this year's pick, then yeah, absolutely you do that, and you figure out the rest later, which is now my fucking, I guess, catchphrase. I say it every fucking time. But all right, so let's get on to our first trade here, which is, I'll read it out for the people that are listening to the podcast, which is the Sixers get Doug McDermott, PJ Washington, and 2 least favorable draft swaps from the San Antonio Spurs. The Hornets get Danny Green, Jakob Poeltl, Matisse Thybulle, and our first-round pick this year. The Spurs get Gordon Hayward, Furkan Korkmaz, and 2 draft swaps and 1 first from the Hornets. So first things first here. The Gordon Hayward thing, we've talked about Gordon Hayward. Like, he wants a bigger role. The Spurs are that small market team that always wants to compete. Like, even when they're bad, they want to be decent. Like they don't want to be a bottom dwelling team. Like, they want to. So, like, they get 2 swaps from us. They get 1 first from the Hornets. The Hornets only have to move back a few picks. We get our guy, PJ Washington, and Doug McDermott. What would you do with this trade? I
actually really like this. Doug McDermott, I think, is a great shooter. He's a bigger dude who actually can, I mean, I'm not going to call him a good defender by any means, but he can hold his own. And I mean, PJ, maybe. And PJ Washington is somebody, you guys talked about this with Dave on your last episode. Like, I would love PJ Washington on our squad. I think he would fit in perfect. This is something I can honestly see Gordon Hayward in San Antonio. That kind of honestly seems like a match made in heaven. Yeah. And this is just personal opinion. I think Popovich, when he steps down, if I had to bet, I would say Quinn Snyder will kind of step in and take over San Antonio. Yeah. Connection. So yes. So I could see that. I honestly could see that. For the Hornets, looking at this, I mean, you get Matisse with those young dudes who don't play any defense at all would kind of, I mean, they're fun to watch already. That would just make them even more fun to watch. Jakob Poeltl, solid big guy. And Danny Green is that veteran that you mentioned earlier. It's like, he's a great locker room dude. He's the perfect guy to have around a young squad, which they have. I like this trade, man. With Furk going to San Antonio, weirdly, I could see him playing for the Spurs as well. Yeah. Like, I don't mind this. If this was on the table, I would do it. Okay, I would do this trade.
I think I'm on the fence about it only because I'm looking at it like this. We give up literally everything we can trade here.
You're right. And granted, sorry, let me just say this. This would be the move, and this is our only move. Yeah. So if this was like the final offer, great. I would gladly take Doug McDermott and PJ Washington and move on from Matisse, Furkan, and Danny. That said, there could be a better deal out there, but yes, I agree with you on the fence. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. What I was going to say was, the thing about this deal is if we could somehow get off the Tobias Harris contract in this deal, like we send Tobias to a 4th team, or we send Tobias to the Spurs and they send out more salary or whatever, we're moving stuff around. I think I'd be more likely to do this only because I think I like PJ Washington a lot, but he theoretically fits best on the Sixers when we're moving Tobias.
You're right.
And because they both play at the 4, like whatever. Right. But I will say, I think that having a guy like Doug McDermott, like just as a shooter off the bench, like you would have to figure out the starting small forward spot again, which would be tough. Like that would not be easy. But as a shooter off the bench, I don't hate Doug McDermott as your 7th, 8th, 9th guy. And then you hopefully just look at it like, you basically look at it like, look, if Doug McDermott sucks, at least we have tradable salary. Like at least like if a team's interested in Jaden Springer, like we can trade Jaden Springer for a $15 million player. Like, so it does give you a little bit more flexibility in that regard, but you're giving up everything. So like, I would maybe do this deal. I'm probably leaning towards no, only because we're giving up everything and we're not getting off the Tobias deal. But I think this is a realistic trade, though. Like I
also think it's realistic. It's PJ Washington. Is this the last year of his deal?
Yeah, he's up for a rookie extension. Yeah. And the reason why they don't want to pay him is because they have Miles Bridges, who like he can play the 3, but like he's ideally a 4. And like if you have 2 guys who are 4, and like PJ's like he can play some small ball 5, but he's not going to play there full time. They need a center. Jakob Poeltl will be great for them. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the NBA. And I mean, if I'm the Hornets, I might jump all over this only because you get a decent starter. You're only moving back 8 picks in the draft. Gordon Hayward wants out anyway, and you get the you don't want PJ Washington potentially anymore, and you get Matisse Thybulle. Like I don't hate this trade for really any team. I think I would probably say no, only because of the fact that we're giving up literally everything. We have. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
But I'm on the fence. It's close.
Yep. And looking at it again, I know it's probably annoying me saying this, but looking at it from this championship window, it's like, okay, Doug McDermott is clearly a better shooter. I mean, Danny Green's not going to play, so we're just kind of eliminating him out of this. He's clearly a better shooter than Matisse, clearly a better shooter than Furkan. He's going to have the most open looks that he's ever had in his whole career with Embiid and Harden. So it's like, okay, cool. Yes, of course, he's not going to be our starting small forward, but having him come off the bench, great. PJ Washington, again, I like that Tobias idea because you're right. They are kind of the same player. Or I wouldn't say same player, but play the same. Yeah, same position. Yep. Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of like this one. I don't think it immediately makes us better and puts us closer to a championship. But I think it is if this was the best deal on the table, I think that it is worth taking the risk because we know how close we are with Matisse and Danny and Furkan. Yeah. So it's like, all right.
And I will say I'm here for the Dougie McBuckets late career role player revival.
Hell
yeah. He just leans into shooting 9 threes a game, which he should be doing right now. Like he shoots 5 a game. Like he should be honestly putting up as many as he possibly can. And to be fair to him, he only played 24 minutes. If you were playing starters minutes, maybe he puts up even more. But per 36, he puts up like 7 or 8. So like that, we need gunners. We need guys like. I think that his defense isn't great, but he's big enough. And like I don't know, maybe we could get away with it. But all right, let's move on to the next one, which is okay. So this is the Sixers get Marcus Morris, their dog, Marcus Morris Sr., who is on it currently has 2 years, $32 million left on his contract. And they send out Danny Green, who we've talked about the Danny thing over and over. It's probably just for salary filler. Furkan Korkmaz, Shake Milton, and the 23rd pick in the draft. The Clippers are definitely going to move on from Marcus Morris this offseason. The reports are out there. They have a ton of wings already. They don't really need him. Danny gets to go back to LA. What do you think of this one?
This one is unique because Marcus Morris, Philly guy, dog. He is a dog. He would fit in perfect, but also this again is kind of giving everything away minus Matisse. So I don't know. I would love Marcus Morris on our current squad because we talked about earlier. We need a dog, and the dude can actually go out and get a bucket. Like he can score. And I don't know. I don't love moving on from our draft pick along with Shake. Again, we just talked about Shake. Like it's worth the risk of just keeping Shake. But again, in this trade, it'd be him and the pick are really the two enticing pieces.
Right. Yeah.
I'm fascinated. Like the report with Indiana wanting Furkan, I'm curious how many other teams are actually interested in him. Like, could he actually step into this Clippers team and come off the bench and get minutes? I don't know.
He only makes $5 million a year, which makes trading for him. I mean, it's just such a low risk move. Like,
You're right.
I think a team like the Clippers would probably just try to flip him, like they tend to do when they get these guys that they don't really want. They just turn around and flip them again because they're just so deep at the wing. Like think about it. They have Kawhi Leonard. They have, if the Sixers had one of their wings, I would feel so much better. They have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, like Luke Kennard. Like they literally have 7. If you consider Nicholas Batum a wing too, like they're a team of wings plus 2 centers and like Reggie Jackson. Like that's their whole team. And like that's one of the reasons why I think that they would be open to a deal like this if maybe they could get a rookie in with that 23rd pick. I do wonder, the one thing I worry about with these trades is like, do you remember a few years ago, this happens to every time when a team like OKC or the Celtics a few years ago, or the Sixers, where they just stack draft picks on top of each other and they have like 20 draft picks.
Uh-huh.
And then they make a trade. Everyone's like, well, I want that pick. I don't want that pick that's like your first round pick at the end of the first. Like, I want the Sacramento pick unprotected. Like,
you got a bucket of them. I want that one.
I do wonder if we're shopping Shake Milton and Furkan Korkmaz, if teams are like, I want Matisse Thybulle. Like, I don't want, like, in this scenario, you're basically trading your first round pick, Furkan Korkmaz, and Shake Milton for a guy who you know will probably be your 6th man, really, because you're still going to start Tobias over Marcus Morris. But he's going to be your 6th man playing close to starter minutes. And I think he's a playoff level rotation guy. I do worry about the age a little bit. He's 31, just a tiny bit. He's a little bit of a chucker, but he will try on defense. He's a good rebounder. Like, I think that this could work. I don't know if the Clippers do it unless they can move the guys elsewhere. But I think like this is probably going to be one of the better packages that they can get for an older Marcus Morris.
Agreed. I think this is a realistic trade too, like a genuinely realistic trade. I don't know. I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the middle because I would love a dude like Marcus Morris. Like you said, he can give us actual meaningful minutes in the playoffs, which is the end goal here, where Shake did a little bit when he got him. Furk, no. Danny Green's off the books. And then the rookie, I don't know. I kind of like this deal. And I think that if this happened, I would be 0% surprised. And
I'd be fine with it. I mean, like, don't quote me on this, but Morty drafted Marcus Morris, if I remember correctly. He was I'm pretty sure one of the Morris twins was drafted by the Rockets. I'm pretty sure it was Marcus Morris. That was drafted by the Rockets. So he does have a history there. Okay. Doc obviously coached him, which is good and also scares me. Because, no matter how poorly he's going to play, he's going to play. Don't worry about that. I do worry just about the defense because I know that it's deep. From my buddy who covers the Clippers told me his defense was kind of fell off a cliff this year, but also the Clippers weren't the Clippers. Like Kawhi and Paul George were out for most of the season. Like that might be more of an effort and focus thing, even though he might be a little bit slower because he's a slow-footed 4, whatever. Like, I don't know. I think like he's a massive upgrade over the George Niang position. I'll put it like that.
Big time. And that puts Niang back into his normal role.
Right.
So where he will excel. Like
spot minutes. Ninth man who just like only plays every once in a while when you need extra shooting. Like, I like that.
Yep. Every few games comes in, gives you 4 threes off the bench. Like I don't mind it. Anything that will give us a dog. I
think I do this deal if we could somehow get like an early second and still get a shot at a young guy. And then also maybe like move Matisse or maybe even just keep Matisse and see what you can get for him later, even though I do think that right now would be the opportune time to trade him. But,
I agree. I agree with you.
All right, let's get on to, I believe the next one is a question. Yeah, it is. All right, so we got a question here from Tyrese Maxey Enthusiast, who said, who's the best and most realistic player you can think of on the MLE? So keep in mind, the MLE was supposed to be $10 million a year. So I had guys like Victor Oladipo, Gary Harris, like pretty good players. Like I think those guys are probably going to get somewhere in that range. So it makes this a little bit tougher for us. I think that the best player I could think of, God, it is fucking tough, dude.
It's hard, man.
I mean, like I'd probably say maybe it's just because Francis from Twitter, who his question's next, he's kind of got me Torian Prince pilled right now. But like, if you're using part of the MLE, like $4 million, maybe $3 million, I wouldn't mind taking a swing on Torian Prince, who like can shoot and tries on defense, and he's a big wing. Like, he can play the three a little bit. Like, there might be some upside there. He's still only like 25 or 26, I think. Like, I wouldn't hate Torian Prince there, but I would imagine that there are better options that I can't think of right now.
Well, let me throw some names out at you, and I want to hear how many. I want to hear what realistic number, like dollar wise, what you think they'll get, because there's a few. Some of these dudes are older, but looking at like Daniel House, for example, what he did in Utah, he essentially took Royce O'Neal's minutes in the playoffs, and it was a better version of Royce O'Neal. So he's somebody I look at where I'm like, okay, I think that's absolutely realistic. I don't think that we have to pay him the full. I think that he would actually give us meaningful minutes and be able to produce something. I think that's not a crazy out there take. Yep. And then I'm fascinated. Wesley Matthews is a name that I just keep thinking of. I think that if Milwaukee, I'll be very curious to see what Milwaukee does. And if you're him, you probably go back there. I would be shocked if he's not back on the Bucks. But he is also a name. I think he played fantastic defense. We know what he can do on the offensive side. Yep. I think that if Milwaukee decides or they can't work something out, I would love Wes Matthews.
Yeah, I'm with that. I actually think Wesley Matthews is probably the best. I do think that Daniel House will probably get like just above, like the deal that he signed in Houston when Morey was there, which like he got just above the minimum. He got like $3 million per year. He'll probably get somewhere in that range. Like, I've every time he's been a free agent, I've been like, take a flyer on Daniel House. He's athletic. He can shoot. Like, I do think that like he's at least going to try. Like, I don't think that like he's kind of one of those guys that's like fringe out of the league sometimes, like the James Ennis type who's going to hustle really hard because they don't know if they're in the league for long. So like, I do think that would be an interesting one, especially for starting three. He's already started with Harden. Do you think, and this is something we talk about on Twitter when his name gets brought up, do you think the bubble thing left a bad taste in Harden and Morey's mouth?
Yeah, I do. I don't see how it wouldn't, to be honest. Yeah. And you nailed it about him being a fringe league guy. I mean, the Jazz were the ones who signed him as a free agent last year. So it's like, of course he is going to be that dude. I love the James Ennis type dude where he is, he's actually going to play because he's literally playing for his career. And he can't take a night off. He can't afford it. I'm right there with you. I don't think that he's going to get some crazy big deal, but I like it. I'm right there. I think that what I saw from him in Utah and what we've seen from him in the past, like, take a flyer on him. Absolutely. For sure. But I think if you do have a shot at a guy like Wesley Matthews, then he's for sure the most realistic, best option. Yep.
Yeah, I'd honestly go your two guys. I'd go Wes Matthews and I'd go Daniel House. Then I would go Torian Prince would be my third guy. But I'd be fine with any of them if you're just doing the taxpayer MLE, which is like $5 or $6 million. Like, you just take a shot on a guy and figure out the rest later, as my new catchphrase. Okay, so copyright Trill Bro dude. All right, this is from Francis Parker, who I've mentioned many times on the podcast. If the line for number of trades by the end of draft night for the Sixers is set at 1.5. For the NBA, it's way over 1.5.
For sure over. Yeah.
At first, I was like, does he make the NBA? And I was like, there's like 30 trades on draft night. I don't know what it is. But yeah, it's set at 1.5. Would you take the over or the under?
This is going to sound so dumb, but if we do make one move, it will be over. I don't think we make one move and stay. But so I know that sounds hilarious because it's either we do nothing or we're over two. I'm going to say over. That's my opinion. I say over. And maybe that's just me being the optimist because I love the offseason. I love trades. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to say over. That's what I'm going with.
So let's think about his first draft. How many trades did he make in his first draft? 2?
Yeah.
Al Horford for Danny Green. And then he traded Josh Richardson and the second round pick for Seth Curry. I don't believe he made any other draft night trades. The second one,
I think that was it.
The second draft, he just bought a pick. I don't think that we made any trades on draft night, if I remember correctly. We were kind of in a weird situation. They were talking about trading Ben, but we couldn't find a trade and whatever. So it does seem like 1.5 would fall right in between what he did his first year and his second year. I'm going to go I'll go over. I think that he'll make, if not marginal moves, he'll make one decent sized move and one marginal move.
Agreed.
And I whether it's buying another late second round pick or trading for 2 second round picks in this draft to get 2 cracks at a guy, or flipping Danny or flipping Matisse, like there's going to be something that happens on draft night with the Sixers, and I think there will probably be, like, the odds are that there will probably be multiple moves made. So
I agree with you. Over.
All right, let's go with the over there. Sixers get KCP, Wizards get Danny Green, pick 23, and Shake Milton. So before you give your answer on this, then I'll give my little spiel on this.
So I don't love KCP. I'm not a KCP guy. And maybe that's just a personal vendetta. I don't know. But this is literally taking a 1-year flyer on him because he's going to get a deal around what he is making now. So you're dumping Danny Green, dumping Shake. You give up our pick. Yes, he makes us better this year. Is he a piece that puts you closer to a championship? Maybe.
He was a
Maybe
starter
he is.
He was a starter on a title team not that long ago, if you count the bubble championship.
You're right, which some days I do, some days I don't.
Depending on who I'm slandering.
Yeah, no kidding. This is a good one. Again, I don't love KCP, but I think that he does put you closer to a championship. You're just losing Shake and giving up on a draft pick, which I don't know.
I mean, what are the odds that the 23rd pick in the draft is more useful than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope next year? I would say 0% chance. That's like I think that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is like a fine fifth starter. He's a good basketball player. He can shoot. He can defend. Like, he's kind of what you ask for with those role players. The one wrench that will be thrown in this is that I've talked to some people that know people in the Wizards. Unfortunately, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is Bradley Beal's best friend. So the reason why they traded for him was because Beal wanted them to trade for him.
Keep him happy. Yeah.
If they're extending him, like, it's probably not going to happen. The only way that I could potentially see this happen is if they trade for Malcolm Brogdon and then they want to try to maybe get Matisse in the trade, and you replace Shake with Matisse, and then they take a crack at a wing at 23 to replace him. But I don't know. I would say this one's a long shot. It does sound like, from everything I've heard, the only way they're going to move KCP and Kuzma is if they think it's a home run upgrade. Like, for example, there was a report that came out today that the Kings have the 4th pick and they would be interested in Kuzma and the 10th pick. Like, that's the kind of upside swing we're talking. Like, they want to move up and take Jaden Ivey at 4 kind of trade. So, and Kuzma already got traded to the Kings once on draft night last year, and then it fell through, so you just make up for it. But, I mean, look, if Kuzma or KCP ever became available, I'd probably be all over it if I'm the Sixers, just because it is impossible to find starting wings in the NBA. It is crazy. The positional value is like, these guys don't become available. Like, they just don't ever. Like, it's even unless Russell Westbrook's on the table. But the fucking Lakers are so stupid. But yeah. So I would do this deal, but like, I definitely would think that they would want Thybulle instead of Shake, which then it's like, all right, you're giving up all your assets. But if KCP can start at 3 next year, just do it.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Anything, I have to remind myself all the time, like, look at it from the perspective of if this puts us closer to championship. Kuzma's also
equity.
Equity, yes, exactly.
That's the term that they love to use. All of us have broken brains. All right, so this one is Reggie Bullock for Danny Green, Matisse Thybulle, and a 2nd-round pick in 2024. How do you feel about this one?
Do you think what we saw from Reggie Bullock this last year's playoffs was like a flash in the pan? Because that's the best I've ever seen him shoot his whole career.
He was awesome.
He was amazing. So if you believe that you can get another year, even 1 year like that out of him, you absolutely do this deal.
Yeah, I'm very biased. I've always thought Reggie Bullock is a very underrated player. He was just always hurt. That was my thing. Like I always felt like he's the kind of guy that I could see on a title team. Like you picture a guy like, like everyone loves Reggie Bullock as a person. Like, he's apparently an awesome guy. He's a really good he's a really good shooter in spurts. His defense is, it's based on the injuries. Like, with these athletic guys, like, you kind of have to just like, if they're hurt, it's not going to look as good. And like, so there's the injury risk there. The thing I like about this trade, and I don't know if Dallas would do it unless they're really high on Thybulle. Like if they think that Thybulle is like they almost traded Jalen Brunson for him 2 years ago. Like, like if they think that he's that level of defensive wing, like I would absolutely think that they would do it. But I also think that they might say, give us your first this year, and then we'll flip it with Thybulle to somewhere else to try to get another rotation player. Or we'll keep Thybulle, flip the pick, and like we just did, and try to get a Christian Wood type with Danny Green's salary.
Yes. Yep.
But they're in win now mode too because of Luka. I would have a hard time seeing them move on from Reggie Bullock. I think the only other guy they're going to try to trade this offseason is not Norman Powell, the other one, Dwight Powell, who is because they got Christian Wood. So like I don't see Dallas doing this, but it's not like crazy out of the question. I just need to know what the league thinks of Thybulle.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the biggest question mark. We have no idea. Like we just have our little Philly brains where it's like, no, we've made up our mind. We know what he is.
Goodbye.
Yeah, see you, buddy. Whereas who knows? In other markets, maybe they want him. But I'm with you. Reggie Bullock for sure is a dude that you can see on a championship team. What we saw from him in the playoffs last year, especially against Utah, that Utah series, man, he was brilliant.
Yeah.
So on both sides of the ball, honestly, he played great defense. So I would be shocked if Dallas really wants Matisse. Great. Especially with this deal, you give up a future second, dump Danny's salary, and just trade Matisse for Bullock. I would do that in the blink of an eye.
Also, Doc Rivers, old guy he coached, Reggie Bullock in LA, famously never played him, and they traded him, and then he ended up going to be pretty good. So that would be a nice memory to relive.
Redemption tour.
Yep, Reggie Bullock, baby. Okay, so this one, I had to do this for my buddy Falk from Twitter, who's been on the drunk streams. Falk loves to send me what I call trade machine war crimes, which are the craziest trades I've ever seen, where the Sixers get like 4 really good players and send out like Furkan Korkmaz and a second round pick. So I had to bring this one up because this is an idea that that was floated out there before, which is basically the Sixers get, so the Kevin Love trade is the thing that I've always flip-flopped on, where like I never wanted Kevin Love because I thought he was washed, and then he was actually pretty good this year, and like he still makes too much money, but like you get off the Tobias Harris contract, the Cavs have interest in Tobias, whatever. So you have Kevin Love and Colin Sexton on a sign-in trade to the Sixers, by the way, who is making $20 million next year. All right, I'm already out on this trade. Tobias Harris and the Bulls' first-round pick to the Cavs, and Matisse Thybulle to the Bulls. So would you do it, and how realistic is this?
Not realistic.
I don't think so.
No. I'm with you with the Kevin Love thing, because I flip-flop back and forth, where a couple years ago, I would have loved Kevin Love on our squad. I think he would have been perfect. But then I thought the same thing. I'm like, he's done. When he quit the Olympic team, I'm like, he's hurt. Like, he's toast. And then he made like actual 6-man of the year run last year. I'm like, okay. Like there's still a little life left in him. Colin Sexton's one of those question marks too, because we clearly know what Garland is, and Garland is a star, like straight up. I love Darius Garland. So I would imagine, want to move on from Colin Sexton. I don't think this is realistic one bit. I think that Tobias, this would be a home run for Tobias to be in Cleveland. If I'm Cleveland, I look at this, I'm like, great. If I can pair if I can dump off an aging Kevin Love, who is going to retire in the next couple of years, and Colin Sexton, who maybe we don't even have a spot for right now, and add Tobias Harris, I think that is a home run for them. The Bulls just give up their first-round pick for Matisse. I don't think this is realistic, and I would not do it strictly from a money standpoint. $20 million, that sign and trade, that's a ton of money.
Especially because we don't need a guy like Colin Sexton now that Maxi's made his leap.
Yeah,
last year was a lot more appealing to me because it was like, who knows? Maybe Colin Sexton could become like a Jordan Poole, a Tyler Hero, a guy who's like on that scoring, shot creating guard. But like now it's like we have Maxi. And like, I'm not going to pay $20 million to a 6-man. Like, that's not really something that I'm interested in. But like, and also Kevin Love can't start. Like, we would be losing 2 starters in this trade.
Yeah.
And we would get back no guys who could start for us because Kevin Love's too slow to play at the 4 now, and Sexton would have to come off the bench. So I wouldn't do this deal. I also don't think it's very realistic, but I had to do it for my buddy Falk because he threw it at me. So
I appreciate that. There were several trades in the replies that were like, "Wow, this is."
I tried to get the more realistic ones that
What you did,
send out like I said, Furkan Korkmaz in a future second to get back an All-Star. But okay, so this one is a very interesting one with a player who we have not seen in quite some time. So this is the Sixers get Jonathan Isaac, Danny Green, Matisse Thybulle, first round pick and second round pick. So they get our first this year. They get future second, which is the highest of Atlanta, Charlotte, or Brooklyn. And then they get Matisse Thybulle and Danny Green's contract. So I think Orlando would certainly do this. I think they get an extra first. Isaac hasn't played in years.
Nope.
And then maybe who knows what they think of Thybulle.
Yeah, this might be one of those things where they hang up the phone and look around at each other like, what the hell? Can you believe we just pulled this off? Jonathan, like you said, we don't know what Jonathan Isaac is anymore because we haven't seen him in so long. So I put this in the same bucket as kind of the Brogdon deal where it's like, okay, like Brogdon, obviously older, further along in his career, has a more of a track record of injuries, but I put this in the same bucket of like this, we're taking a total flyer. This is a total risk. And I mean, high risk, high reward, but also I'm trying to think realistically, when's the last time that Jonathan Isaac played?
The bubble.
Oh yeah. See, I'm out. Maybe that's just me, but I'm strictly out just for that reason.
He also feels like a guy that's just going to randomly retire one day.
No,
he's just going to be like, I'm going to follow God. I'm going to go on my book tour and sell books to conservatives and do like the whole fucking thing. And I don't need basketball anymore. Like once his contract's up, like I could just see that happening. And I think that like realistically, I don't know. Like if you're Orlando, what's the rush really? Like, because if Isaac comes back and he's healthy, then he's a good player, very good defender, like might still have some offensive upside. Who knows? But like, you're not in a rush. You're rebuilding. Like you got to just focus on keeping your talent and not rushing him out. But also at the same time, if you could get a first round pick and a guy you might like in Matisse Thybulle, like it might be a little bit just like, we don't think this guy's going to ever be the same. Like, let's move on. We're going to draft maybe Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero, or Chet Holmgren, who, by the way, all will play the 4 in the NBA.
You're right.
Isaac isn't even in the picture at the 4 anymore. He can play a little bit of 3. I mean, I'll say this much. If Jonathan Isaac were the Jonathan Isaac before the injury, he would be the best starting small forward we could probably get.
Yeah, that's fair. But I agree. But we don't know.
It's the Brogdon thing.
The Brogdon thing, and I love what you said about that. I honestly, Kyrie, there were parts of Kyrie's season where I'm like, the dude's going to retire. Like, he's just straight up going to wake up one day and tweet some nonsense out and just quit and never show up again. Jonathan Isaac, I think 100% could be the same thing.
Same category.
Be the next Fox News correspondent.
Jonathan Isaac, he's actually quitting to join the Trump 2024 team. I'm actually really excited to see. All right. Okay, so this one was just done as a fuck you to me, which is the Sixers get Terrence Ross, who has the worst. Okay, so you see how you can see how you get like LeBron, like the LeBron statistic is included in this. He had a negative 4.5 LeBron this year, which to put in perspective, Joel Embiid had one of the best, and I think he was like a +5. So he is -9 worse. That's the worst LeBron I've ever seen in my life. For the Magic get Danny Green, Furkan Korkmaz, and a future second. I literally would rather have Furkan Korkmaz than Terrence Ross. Yeah. I don't think there's a single player in the NBA I dislike more than Terrence Ross. Like,
is that the reason? You just can't stand him?
He's literally horrible. Like, he is so first off, he is a guy who I listened to a podcast earlier with someone who I actually respect this person a lot, so I'm not going to use their name. But they had mentioned in passing, they were like, he'll be like a Jonathan or a Terrence Ross type. Like, he'll shoot 40% from 3. And I'm like, Terrence Ross is the 35 career percent 3-point shooter. And also, he's only shot like above 38 twice in his career. He's never shot over 40%. And He's not that good of a ball handler. Everyone thinks he's this 6-man guy. He's a horrible defender. He has the worst shot selection I've ever seen. He won the Sixers a game earlier this year when we played them because he was just there was a game where he literally shot him out of the game down the stretch, and I was like, thank you to fucking Terrence Ross for handing us this win. And I honestly, we talked about this on Twitter earlier. Someone had tweeted at me because I said, if you want to get Victor Wembanyama on your team next year, you want to get the number 1 pick in the next draft, trade for Terrence Ross because he will absolutely be the best tank commander you've ever seen in your entire life. And as someone said, it's like, you know how like every time Danny Green gets traded, he goes to a team and they make the finals, or except the Sixers, obviously. Someone was like, he could be like the tanking team version of that, where he just gets traded to a new team and he's so bad that they get the number 1 pick. So yeah, not a Terrence Ross guy, if you can tell. I will forever escape me why people think this guy is good.
I feel like Terrence Ross is another one of those names that has been linked to Sixers and trade talks for forever.
Since 2018.
Yeah, and it's so funny when I think of Terrence Ross, the fact that it says secondary ball handler is hilarious underneath his name. I was looking at that, I'm like, what?
What does he do?
dropped like 50-51 like forever ago. I believe that was his career high, and that's it. Like that, it was like, oh, the dude he's a bucket, like he can go get it. No, like he can't. I'm right there with you. There's hoopers and there's chuckers, and he is a chucker.
Yes. Exactly.
1,000%. He's an athletic chucker, and that's it. I also would not do this. I think the upside of Furk is better than a 1-year chucker on a deal making $11.5 million. Like that. Okay. Terrence Ross does not put us closer to a championship. No shot.
Just really quickly, over the past 4 seasons, other than his contract year when he shot 42% from the field, he shot 39% from the field, 39% from the field, 40% from the field, and 41% from the field. He shot 29% from 3 this year. Why does anyone want this guy? It's beyond me. He's horrible. Let's move on from the Terrence Ross. I saw people talking about it on Twitter, and I'm like, why do you guys like Terrence Ross? I don't get it. My buddy Magic Vagberg, who has been trying to push Terrence Ross off the Magic for like 3 seasons. He'll tweet every time that there's any Sixers rumors. He'll just tweet a picture of Terrence Ross in a Sixers jersey because he said he would take a top 55 protected second to get rid of Terrence Ross. Like he hates him. He hates him more than anyone in the NBA. It's amazing. All right, let's run through the last few because I got to get out of here soon. But all right. So we got your boy Royce O'Neal for Matisse Thybulle and Furkan Korkmaz. Would you do this deal?
I would do this deal, yes. I think that Royce needs a change of scenery. I think that he is stuck in a role right now alongside Donovan Mitchell and just the rest of the Jazz roster. I don't think that the Jazz would do this because I think they're going to try to shake things up differently and dump Rudy and kind of bring in some pieces that will complement Royce O'Neal. But from a strictly Sixers standpoint, yes, I would take Royce O'Neal. I think he would fit along our starting lineup very, very well.
Yeah. I mean, he's a starting 3. Like, we just need a starting 3. He'll play defense. He'll rebound. He'll shoot threes. Like, yeah, I'm with getting Royce O'Neal. I think if this trade were to happen, it would have to be Furkan Korkmaz, Matisse Thybulle, and our first-round pick. I
agree.
I would also do it, but keep in mind I'm lower than anyone in the world on Matisse Thybulle. So, so we'll see what his value is. Also, Royce O'Neal just feels like a guy that Morey would like. He's got 2 years left on his deal at $9 million. Like, it's just
favorable contract.
Yeah, like I mean, like I feel like he'd be about this. All right, so this is the Sixers which this trade is a little bit less realistic now because the Rockets just got another first-round pick last night. But I didn't mention any Eric Gordon trades in the last podcast, and I probably should have because he's someone who's going to get traded, and they're looking for a first-round pick still for him. So it's Eric Gordon, Jayshawn Tate, and a future Rockets second-round pick for Danny Green, Furkan Korkmaz, Matisse Thybulle, and our first-round pick this year.
I love Eric Gordon. I always have. I've been a big Gordon fan. I'm assuming that him and Harden got along. I don't know if there's any. Yeah. No, okay. There you go.
They're good. Apparently he's one of his favorite teammates. So
see there you go. Yeah. I love him. I've always thought since I saw him in college, his shot is kind of funny and off the side of his body, but it goes in. So who the hell cares?
Yeah.
I like this deal. I honestly do. I think that this is one that puts us closer to a championship if Eric Gordon stays healthy.
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
and honestly, the thing about Jayshawn Tate to me, who's the person who's not the headliner of this deal, Jayshawn Tate is kind of what you want Matisse Thybulle to be. Like, defensively, he's not as good as Thybulle, but defensively, he's very good. He's a really good rebounder, so he would solve a lot of our rebounding issues. He's a little bit undersized for a three, but he could be a bench wing. He could be like, to me, if he can ever get to the point where he's an average shooter, kind of like Matisse, I could see him being a legit guy in a championship rotation. And he's just a good player. And I think that Eric Gordon, I've been very anti-Morey doing just get Rockets guys. But if Eric Gordon's the best guy you can get, Eric Gordon's good. And like I went on a Rockets Twitter Spaces the other day, and they kind of talked me into him. They're like, look, Eric Gordon is not going to try in the regular season. He'll take 20 games off a year. But when you get to the playoffs, Eric Gordon's going to show up. He was like, he hits big shots. He's been known throughout his career. He played great defense on Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in the playoffs like 3 years ago, not that long ago. And then you have, the guys you're moving on from here is really just the 23rd pick is the only asset. If Houston could know that they could move this 23rd pick either for a player they like or for a future first or whatever it is, I think that both teams would do this deal. And I think that this is the kind of trade where I'm like, all right, we get 2 rotation players.
Yep.
We get 2 rotation players. One, Eric Gordon's a little bit undersized, but I think he could probably start at the 3. He's got a big wingspan. He started at the 3 the past few years. Like, he's a great switch defender. Like, as long as he's not falling off a cliff, which is always my fear with trading for these guys in their 30s, I'm doing this deal 100%.
I agree. I
also,
agree right there.
He's got 2 years left, but the last year is not guaranteed. So if things go off the rails, you can move on from him in a year. So
I like that trade. I like that trade.
I want you to read this one.
I did a double take because I'm like, what the hell am I looking at?
Soft Serve Sports on Twitter tweeted this at me. The Sixers get second round pick, least favored, and Matisse Thybulle goes to Guantanamo Bay. Now, anyone who listens to the podcast knows the Trade Machine War Crimes jokes. We kept sending guys to Guantanamo and jail and the Hague and all that stuff. And first off, abolish Guantanamo Bay. We don't need that thing anymore.
Of course.
Second off, I would never do this to Matisse. He seems like a good guy. Like I know he drives me crazy as a basketball player, but he's probably a fine dude. So let's move
Guantanamo got better by 2 games by doing that
deal. Look, they're in a rebuild right now.
Oh my goodness. Okay, right. I'm really happy that we're seeing Lou Dort's name up here because he's one I want to talk about.
Okay. So we have the Sixers getting Derek Favors and Lou Dort, which, oh God, Derek Favors,
like Paul,
giving Doc another big to play deep into the playoffs. It's a veteran, but Lou Dort is the prize of this trade. So obviously they get Dort and they send out Danny Green, Furkan Korkmaz, Shake Milton in the 23rd pick. Now the person that tweeted this at me said you could include Thybulle instead of Furkan if you think that's more realistic. The rumor that came out today was that the Blazers are thinking about trading back to the 12th pick for Lou Dort and the 7th pick. So the OKC would move up to 7. They would move back. They'd get Lou Dort. I think they're going to draft a guard if they move up. So they don't really have a use for Lou Dort anymore. My guess is that they're going to try to get up to 4 and get Jaden Ivey. So if they do that, then they really don't have a use for Lou Dort anymore. And he's going to be on the move. Now, does Portland move on from Dort after that? Because if Portland's willing to move on from Dort and I can get him for basically Thybulle and the 23rd pick, I'm definitely doing that. Because
I do it too.
He's once again kind of the more actualized version of what Matisse Thybulle is. His defense is like a little bit overrated because he had that one series where he played Harden really well. But like he's a capable enough shooter. He shoots like 34% for his career. He puts up a lot of threes, and offensively, he's got a little bit of juice off the dribble. Like, he could be our start. He's an undersized guy once again, but all these guys are. He could be a starting small forward for us next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think there's a little dog in Lou Dort, which I really, really appreciate. Yep. Yeah. I would love that. I think he is an upgrade from Matisse, and if that is what ended up happening, and they do pull off some trade, like you said with that report today with Portland, I think we jump all over that. Derek Favors' name literally sends shivers down my spine. I just think of like Paul Millsap, DeAndre Jordan all over again. And Derek Favors, again, probably a great dude. Spent a lot of time in Utah, like awesome, his prime. But absolutely hell no, I do not want any
we gotta move him somewhere else.
Yeah, you're out. You're absolutely out. But if we can get Lou Dort, exactly like you said, in Portland's looking to move on, great. I would do that in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. All right, so let's move on. I believe we have one or two slides left. All right, this is, people know I don't like Cam Reddish, so of course this is another person that they sent, Cam Reddish. By the way, I don't hate Cam Reddish as a person. I don't hate him as even a player, to be honest. I don't want him on the Sixers because he thinks he's a superstar. That's always been my thing. I don't want guys who think they're superstars. I want guys who know their role. He's a fine player for the Knicks. Like, it was a smart trade for them to take a shot on a guy like him. It's fine. Mm-hmm. So the Sixers get Cam Reddish, the Bulls first, and the Knicks second for Matisse Thybulle and Isaiah Joe going to the Bulls, and the Knicks get Kobe White. I don't think the Knicks would do this.
No, I don't either. Kobe White's not enough upside for them.
Yeah, they have too much. They have too many guards already.
100%. I think the Knicks realistically will make a move. I would see Brogdon landing in New York. Like, I think that's realistically, if Brogdon's going to be moved, I think that's where he goes, because
and we know how will probably get moved to Indiana because they're trying to take shots on young guys. So, which
makes perfect sense for them. He would fit that young team great. I'm with you on Cam Reddish. I've heard some reports when he was in Atlanta that he just doesn't love basketball. Like, he does not love to play. So that makes a huge difference. Why would anybody want to take somebody who doesn't love the game of basketball? You have to.
Not a dog.
He's not a dog. Opposite of a dog. And that is not what we're looking for. The picks interest me, though, because could we package our pick with 18 somewhere? Who knows? Like, move up? Absolutely. But I don't know. I don't love this. The Knicks definitely don't do it. I think they're in on Brogdon. I think Reddish is for sure a part of that trade. For us, just getting Cam Reddish, some picks, cool, but yeah, I'm out on this one.
I wonder if the Bulls would really trade 18 for Thybulle. That's what this comes to. I don't think they will. I think that I think maybe if they were moving on from Kobe and they could get back like Thybulle and something else, maybe. But I just don't. I don't really see this as realistic. Look, I would love the idea of Cam Reddish, a guy who's turned himself into a very good shooter. He shoots like 40% from three on decent volume, shoots 90% from the line. At one point he was a good defender. It just, once again, I don't want the mindset of a guy who might not be crazy about basketball, who might be like thinking he's bigger than he actually is. And I'm just looking specifically for guys that can fit on this team and help us win a championship. If you think that Cam Reddish is a starting level point guard or starting level small forward, then you would do the deal. That's fine. I just don't see it with him, but a lot of people seem to like him. So, all right, Josh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Go subscribe to his podcast. That's Ball, folks. Love the name. We're keeping the Ball tradition going.
Hell yeah.
And then you can follow Josh on Twitter at Josh Reynolds 24. Thanks, bud, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Trill, you're the man. Thanks, dude.
Peace, bud.